A young woman rescues a cowboy from a sinking vehicle in a river. A few days later, she discovers he is the wealthy man who secretly owns her entire town. "Stop. Oh my goodness. Stop," Ellie shouted, her voice cutting to the thunderous rain as she slammed on the brakes. Moments before, she had heard the screech of twisting metal. Now, through her foggy windshield and the heavy downpour, she barely made out a silver pickup truck crashing through the guardrail ahead. It careened off the bridge's edge. The bridge. And then it disappeared from view. "No, no, no," she cried, shifting her car into park and flinging open the door. Rain pelted her face as soon as she stepped outside. The wind tore at her jacket. She sprinted forward, heart racing, her boots slipping on the wet pavement. At the bridge's edge, her stomach churned. In the swollen Maplewood River below, the pickup was rapidly sinking. The hood was already underwater, and the cab was filling with water fast. She spotted a figure inside, slumped over the steering wheel, motionless. Without hesitation, Ellie dashed forward. She climbed over the guardrail and scrambled down the muddy embankment, slipping but grabbing branches and rocks to steady herself. Everything was slick from the rain. Every step was dangerous. She reached the riverbank, gasping for breath, teeth chattering, and stared at the truck bobbing in the current. Then she dove in. The icy water hit her like a shock, violent and unforgiving. The current pulled hard against her, but she swam fiercely, cutting through the dark water with her arms, fighting the flow. She reached the truck just as the water rose above the windows. The man inside was still unmoving. She grabbed the side mirror with one hand and pounded on the glass with the other. "Hey, can you hear me? Hey!" No answer. The door handle wouldn't budge. Determined, she slammed her elbow against the window repeatedly until the glass shattered. Her arm stung from the cuts, but she kept going. She reached inside, grabbed the man's jacket, and pulled. He was heavy, like dead weight. "Come on," she grunted. "Don't do this." With one last effort, she hauled him out through the window. His body slipped free, head lolling forward, a soaked, battered cowboy hat still clutched in his right hand. They both went under. She kicked upward, lungs burning, dragging him until she broke the surface. Coughing and sputtering, she kicked toward the shore, his weight slowing her down. Every stroke was agony. Somehow she made it. They collapsed on the muddy riverbank. Ellie lay panting, water dripping from her clothes, limbs numb. The man beside her didn't move. She quickly checked his pulse weak, but there. "Hey," she said, gently slapping his cheek. "Hey, wake up. Don't leave me now. After everything." He coughed once. His eyes barely opened, staring at her like in a dream. "You okay?" she asked, blinking rain from her eyes. He blinked, lips parting. "Thank you," he rasped. "I owe you my life." Before she could answer, he passed out again. Ellie grabbed her phone, hands trembling, and dialed 911. She stayed with him, keeping him warm, shielding him as best she could with her jacket until help arrived. At the hospital, she gave her statement, explaining what she saw, how she found him, what she did. No one told her his name. He had no ID and hadn't spoken another word. By morning, he was gone. Ellie returned the next day with muffins, just in case, but the nurse shook her head. He had checked himself out during the night. No name left behind. Just vanished. She drove home in silence, confused, unsettled, and strangely haunted by his face. The way he held on to that old cowboy hat. Even unconscious, the way he looked at her when he whispered those words. Over the next few days, she shared the story with co-workers at the bakery, with her best friend Hannah, even with the local postman, a drifter. They all said, "Lucky to be alive. Could have been worse." Someone else shrugged. "Let it go, Ellie. You did your good deed." She tried. She really did. Until the fifth morning, when she was arranging pastries in the bakery window and glanced across the street. There he was, not riding into town like a movie scene, just standing there with a dolly full of groceries, helping an elderly shop owner unload boxes into a small convenience store. The hat was the same, worn tan with a faded leather band. His jeans were cleaner, boots scuffed but sturdy. He moved carefully, politely avoiding attention. But it was him. Their eyes met. This time he didn't disappear. He smiled and tipped his hat. The name whispered around town wasn't his real one. No one knew it, and Wyatt never shared it. In Maplewood, he was simply the cowboy in the straw hat. He began to appear all over town. One morning, he was seen helping an elderly woman change a flat tire outside the pharmacy. The next day, he was repainting the worn fence around the local church. Not because anyone asked him, but simply because it needed to be done. A few days later, he was spotted carrying heavy grocery bags for a blind veteran who lived a few blocks from Main Street. He never requested anything in return, always dressed the same way. A simple button-down shirt tucked into faded jeans, worn boots, and that old cowboy hat pulled low over his eyes. He kept to himself but never seemed distant. There was a way he nodded that made people feel acknowledged, a quiet presence that inspired trust more than any flashy charm could. No one knew where he lived or where he came from. Naturally, rumors spread. Some said he was a drifter, a ranch hand out of work, or a man escaping city life. But no one pressed him for answers. The town had seen many wanderers before. Most just passed through. This one stayed. Then, one day, he walked into Ellie's bakery. It was a slow Tuesday morning, the warm air filled with the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread. Ellie was arranging croissants behind the counter when she heard the soft chime of the doorbell. She looked up, and there he was, not across the street this time, but right inside. He politely took off his hat as he entered, brushing raindrops from the brim. "Morning," he said, his voice low but friendly. "Hi," Ellie replied, surprised but composed. He glanced around the shop, taking in the neat rows of bread and pastries. "Smells like memories in here," he said with a slight smile. She raised an eyebrow. "Good ones, I hope." "The best kind." He ordered a dozen cinnamon rolls and a box of pecan tarts, asking if they could be delivered to the Maplewood Retirement Center by noon. "Just tell them it's from a friend," he said, leaving more than enough cash. Before leaving, he looked at the counter and then at her name tag. "Ellie," he said thoughtfully. "Thank you for that day." She froze. "I haven't forgotten," he added, tipping his hat before walking out. He didn't give his name again, but that was the moment Ellie stopped pretending she wasn't curious. He kept appearing not just in town, but in her life. Some mornings, he'd stop by the bakery before opening, tapping on the glass and waving if she was inside. He started ordering small things, apple turnovers, black coffee, sometimes a loaf of rye for a neighbor, and asking how her day was going. He listened, truly listened, not just with polite nods while waiting to speak. Wyatt listened like someone who needed the sound of another voice to stay grounded. He asked about her mother, her favorite books, why she stayed in Maplewood when so many had left. He never talked about himself. Occasionally, she tried, "So, where'd you learn to fix cars?" Always as handy with a paintbrush. She'd ask. He'd smile, maybe shrug, then gently steer the conversation back to her. It was both frustrating and endearing. One morning, he brought her a paper cup of coffee before the shop opened. "Figured you're always the one giving," he said. "Might be nice to be on the receiving end." They drank it together on the bench outside, watching the town wake up. "Why Maplewood?" she asked eventually. "You could be anywhere." He gazed toward the trees. "Some places just pull you back." She didn't press further. Their talks became a ritual brief, simple, unhurried. He always arrived first, quietly held the door, bought something small, and stayed just long enough to leave a hint of warmth behind. Though he remained a mystery, one thing became clear to Ellie with every meeting. This cowboy, this quiet stranger with storm in his eyes and silence in his soul, wasn't just passing through. He was searching for something. Maybe even someone special. When Wyatt asked Ellie if she wanted to join him at the Maplewood Fall Festival, she blinked in surprise. She was wiping down the bakery counter late one afternoon when he leaned in with his usual half-smile and said, "I heard there's dancing and kettle corn. Interested?" She hesitated, her hands pausing on the cloth. "You mean like a date?" He shrugged. "Call it whatever gets you to say yes." Ellie chuckled despite herself. "All right, why not?" That Saturday evening, The town square glowed warmly beneath strings of amber lights. Stalls lined the sidewalks, offering hot cider, roasted corn, handmade jewelry, and more varieties of pie than she could count. Children darted around with caramel apples in hand, and folk music played softly from a portable speaker near the crowd center. Ellie arrived wearing a soft maroon sweater and jeans, her hair loosely braided. Wyatt was already there, holding 2 cups of cider. He wore a navy button-down over a plain white tee, his cowboy hat tilted low, and those same worn boots that somehow always fit right in. "You clean up well," she teased as she took a cup. "You too," he replied. "You even smell like cinnamon." "I always smell like cinnamon." They wandered through the festival, stopping to eat grilled corn while laughing as butter dripped down their fingers. Wyatt tried the ring toss but missed every time. Ellie won a small plush bear at the balloon darts and insisted he keep it in his jacket pocket for the rest of the night. Being with him felt easy. He never rushed their talks or filled silences with meaningless chatter. She found herself opening up more than usual about the bakery, the town, her favorite books, and eventually her father. "He died when I was 7, she said, fingers wrapped around her paper cup. "A heart attack. It was sudden. My mom raised me alone after that. She's the strongest person I know, but her own health isn't great these days." Wyatt's expression softened, hands tucked in his pockets. "That's a heavy burden for a kid." It was, "But Maplewood has a way of catching you when you fall." He nodded, glancing toward the square. "It does." Ellie tilted her head. "You say that like you've fallen here before." He didn't answer right away. They walked quietly for a moment, passing the line for cider donuts and caramel apples. Then the music shifted to an upbeat old country tune, and a few couples moved to the center of the square to dance beneath the lights. "Do you dance?" he asked suddenly. "I've been known to try." He held out his hand. "Let's see," she said, surprised at how naturally her fingers fit in his. They stepped into the swirling group. Though he said little, he moved with confidence, guiding her gently and never missing a beat. Around them, the world blurred into lights and laughter. Ellie's cheeks flushed for more than just the cool air. She hadn't danced like this in years, not since high school, not since life got serious. "You're good at this," she said. "Used to be," he replied. "Used to be? When?" Wyatt smiled but didn't answer. Later, they sat on a bench near the square's edge, sipping fresh cider as the crowd thinned. "You really know everyone here," he said, "like you're part of the town's foundation." "I've lived here my whole life," she said. "I guess the town grows around you." He nodded slowly, thoughtful. Ellie looked at him and finally asked a question that had been on her mind for days. "Have you lived here before?" Wyatt turned to her, a flicker of something crossing his face of surprise, maybe something deeper. "You seem to know this place too well to be new," she continued. "You knew about Mrs. Beasley's broken porch before anyone told you. You took that shortcut behind the library like you'd walked it 100 times. Have I?" He paused, then gave a faint, almost sad smile. "I've passed through." "That's not what I asked." He looked away, fingers tightening around his cup. "Some things are easier left in the past." Ellie frowned. "Why does that sound like you're hiding something?" Wyatt met her gaze, a soft deflection in his eyes. "Because maybe I am." She studied him quietly, then said softly, "You don't have to tell me everything. Just don't pretend there's nothing to tell." Wyatt didn't reply. The music faded behind them. Lights shimmered above. But for the first time that night, the warmth between them cooled slightly like a breeze slipping through a door left ajar. The bakery was quieter than usual that morning. Rain tapped gently against the windows as Ellie restocked the pastry trays with practiced hands. Wyatt had come in early, as he often did, picking up 2 coffees and a box of croissants for the folks at the shelter, he said. But today felt different. He stepped outside to take a phone call, and though Ellie hadn't meant to overhear, his voice carried through the open door. "I'll make the final decision by next week. Maplewood's future is on the line. Tell Blackstone Holdings to hold off until they hear from me." Her hands froze over the tray. Blackstone Holdings. The name echoed in her mind like a warning bell. She ducked out of sight, heart pounding. thoughts racing. Wyatt's voice lowered, and she caught nothing more, but the damage was done. That name. She knew it. Everyone in Maplewood knew it. Blackstone Holdings was a real estate giant that had quietly bought up half the county over the past decade, acquiring businesses through shell companies, including the deed to land where her mother's house stood. She waited until Wyatt left, flashing his easy, familiar smile and promising to see her tomorrow. She nodded, barely managing a smile in return. As soon as he was gone, she pulled out her phone and searched. Her fingers trembled. Wyatt Eli Blackstone, CEO in waiting. Son of Charles Blackstone, the late founder, currently acting as the executive, known for his silence in the media and avoidance of public events. A recluse, an enigma, a deception. He wasn't just some cowboy who wandered into town. He owned it. That evening, Ellie sat on the bench outside the bakery, arms folded, watching twilight settle over Maplewood. The lights from the shops flickered on one after another. The rain had stopped, but the air was still cold. Wyatt arrived right on time, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You always bring 2, she said without looking at him. He laughed softly, handing her one. "Habit, I guess. Or hope." She accepted the cup but didn't drink. "You said something earlier," she said cautiously. "On the phone." He stiffened, barely noticeable. "Did I?" "Something about deciding Maplewood's future. About Blackstone Holdings." Silence. She turned to face him fully. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" His face showed surprise, then acceptance. "I was going to." "When?" "After you bought up the rest of the town." He exhaled slowly, placing his coffee on the bench beside him. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because it feels exactly like what I think." Her voice grew sharp. "You came here pretending to be one of us, fixing fences, helping strangers, buying pastries like it was all genuine. But it wasn't. You were just gathering information, weren't you? Acting like a humble observer. And what was I, Wyatt? Part of your experiment. Just local color to flavor your market research." He didn't flinch, but didn't deny it either. "I came here to remember what it meant. To belong somewhere," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure I ever had. Not really. I didn't plan for any of this." Ellie stood, anger tightening her shoulders. "You knew. I trusted you. You let me believe you were just like me, like any of us." "I was here," he said, "just not the way you thought." "Exactly," she snapped. "You were a lie." Wyatt looked up at her, pain in his eyes, voice steady. "I used to think being in charge meant controlling everything. Buildings, people, futures. Then I came here and met you." Ellie hesitated. "You didn't change because of who I am," he continued. "You were kind to a stranger. You pulled me out of a river. You listened. You challenged me. You saw a man, not a name. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be the guy with all the answers. I just wanted to be enough." The words hung between them like dust settling after an explosion. Ellie looked away, her throat tight. "You should have told me." "I know." She turned back to him, eyes burning. "So what happens now? You go back to your boardroom and decide if we live or die here." Wyatt's voice softened. "No, I came here thinking I'd make a decision. But now I think maybe Maplewood is deciding for me." She said nothing. He stood, leaving his coffee behind. "I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry I did." Then he walked away, not looking back. Ellie watched him leave. Every step a question she couldn't answer. Wyatt was gone. No farewell, no note, just silence. He vanished as quietly as he'd come, without drama or fanfare, as if he'd never been there at all. But he had. Ellie felt the emptiness he left behind, like a missing beat in her daily rhythm. She still opened the bakery each morning, still stocked the same pastries, poured the same coffee. But nothing felt the same. The bench outside remained empty. Every time the doorbell rang, her heart jumped before she even realized she was hoping. The town whispered. Though most didn't know his name, rumors about a massive land purchase grew louder daily. The newspaper ran a brief article about a potential development deal and resort zoning talks. Then the letter arrived. It came folded in an unmarked envelope, slipped under the bakery door. Ellie opened it after closing, hands dusted with flour, still wearing her apron. The logo at the top was unfamiliar, sleek, and corporate. But the message was clear. A formal proposal was being submitted to the town council for a complete redevelopment of the riverfront district. The plan? A modern resort retail strip and luxury condos. Several properties would be subject to compulsory buyout under eminent domain, including hers. Her hands trembled. The next day, flyers appeared on telephone poles and bulletin boards. Public hearing. Maplewood Town Hall. Community feedback on development proposal. This Thursday. She barely slept that week. Or baked much either. Hannah offered to cover the counter so Ellie could take some time off, though neither spoke aloud about what for. On Thursday evening, Ellie stood at the back of the crowded town hall, shoulders tense, palms sweaty. The room buzzed with anxious energy. Business owners, farmers, retirees all clutching letters like hers. The front table was lined with city officials, their faces tight. When the presentation began, Ellie already knew what to expect. A tall man in a gray suit spoke confidently about opportunity, investment, and progress. He promised jobs, tourism, and revitalization. He clicked through slides showing gleaming buildings, new infrastructure, and smiling families shopping under perfect blue skies. But none of it looked like Maplewood. Then came the public comment section. No one moved. Ellie's heart pounded. Her throat dried. She stood anyway. The room turned to look. She took a shaky breath. My name is Ellie Dawson. My family has called Maplewood home for 3 generations. We're not against progress. But what you're proposing isn't progress. It's destruction. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Ellie continued. You want to build something shiny and new, but it will cost everything that makes this town who it is. The land you're targeting isn't just property. It's homes. It's history. It's the people who show up when a stranger's car breaks down, or when someone's porch starts to rot. Her voice grew stronger. I know who's behind this, she said, and I know he wasn't always like this. I believed he understood what makes this place special. I hope, she paused, I hope he still does. Silence filled the room. Then a single clap broke the quiet. Another followed. Soon, half the room was standing. Ellie didn't cry until she sat back down. She wasn't sure if it would make a difference, if anyone could stop what was coming. But for the first time since Wyatt disappeared, she felt grounded again. And if he was still out there, watching, wondering, she hoped he heard her. The town hall was packed again. A week had passed since the last meeting, but the tension was heavier than before. This time, people arrived early. They brought signs, stories. They brought questions no slick presentation could answer. Ellie sat in the third row, hands folded in her lap. Her heart pounded, but her face was calm. She didn't know what to expect that night. Maybe more of the same developers in suits, empty promises, tired eyes. What she didn't expect was for the back doors to swing open halfway through the meeting and for Wyatt Blackstone to walk in, not wearing a hat or dusty boots. No disguise, no hiding. He wore a simple black button-down shirt, dark jeans, and a look that said he understood exactly what this moment meant. The room went silent. People whispered. Some recognized him from town. Others were confused. But Ellie knew, the moment their eyes met, she knew he hadn't just come back. He had come to decide. He walked straight to the front and politely asked to speak. The mayor, clearly surprised, stepped aside. Wyatt faced the crowd. No microphone, just his voice. My name is Wyatt Blackstone, he began. Yes, that Blackstone. A ripple ran through the audience. For the past few months, I've lived among you. Not as an owner, not as a CEO, just as a man trying to remember what matters. His eyes found Ellie's again. When I came here, I thought I was supposed to make decisions about land, numbers, strategy. But what I found was something else entirely. He paused, took a breath. I found a town where people still help each other fix porches without asking why. A place where neighbors bring baked goods to the sick. Where a girl jumps into a river to save a stranger, without hesitation. Ellie felt her throat tighten. I came here to see if Maplewood was worth saving. But Maplewood doesn't need saving. I do. The room was silent. No one moved. "So here's my decision," Wyatt said, voice steady. "There will be no resort, no forced buyouts, no luxury condos." A gasp swept through the crowd. "I'm canceling the development deal and transferring land use rights to a new community trust run locally. The people of Maplewood will decide what gets built and what doesn't." The silence broke into murmurs, then applause, then cheers. Wyatt raised a hand. "I don't need to own this town to call it home. I just need to know it belongs to the people who have loved it all along." Then he stepped down. Later, as the crowd slowly dispersed, Ellie stood by the door, unsure what to say when he approached. He didn't speak at first. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small manila envelope. "I believe you once said you dreamed of a bookshop," he said. Ellie opened it. Inside was a signed deed for one riverfront lot, formally slated for demolition. Attached was a simple business permit application, pre-approved. "It's yours," he said. "Do whatever you want with it. You've earned more than just words." She looked up at him, eyes full, voice soft. "Do you really mean it?" He nodded, every word. A long silence passed between them, but it wasn't heavy. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. "Neither am I," he replied. "But maybe we don't have to be. Maybe we just begin." Under the soft glow of the town hall lights, with hope still echoing off the walls, they stood side by side, two people choosing something harder than ownership, deeper than control. They chose each other. The space had sat empty for years, once a hardware store, then a laundromat, and most recently a boarded-up shell on Maplewood's riverfront. But now the dust was gone, the windows replaced, the walls painted in warm earth tones. Sunlight streamed to the glass like a promise. Ellie stood in the middle, a paint roller in one hand, a streak of blue paint on her cheek. Wyatt stood on a ladder nearby, adjusting a light fixture above the front counter. "Try it now," he called. She flicked the switch. The bulbs flickered, then glowed. Warm, steady light. She looked up and smiled. Perfect. For weeks, they had worked side by side, scraping, painting, lifting, laughing. They debated over tile shades, floor layouts, even the aroma of the coffee roast. But their disagreements were light-hearted, the kind of tension that strengthens rather than breaks. They weren't in a hurry, and they weren't pretending. Everything was already set, yet they moved forward side by side. Outside, a handmade sign hung in the window. "Coming soon, Rising River Books and Cafe." The idea had been Ellie's, but the drive was theirs together. They didn't stop at just the bookstore. That summer, Wyatt helped organize Maplewood's first ever Little Readers Camp, held right in the town square. Children gathered beneath colorful tents to hear stories, create crafts, and sip lemonade. Ellie read aloud each morning while Wyatt took care of setup and ran the cornhole tournament in the afternoons. He wore a crooked book buddy, apron the entire week, much to the delight of every kid under 10. It wasn't just the children who showed up. Parents stayed. Grandparents volunteered. The whole town came day after day, drawn to something that felt more like family than just an event. Behind the scenes, Wyatt worked quietly with the Community Trust Board, never seeking recognition. It was his influence that secured the grant for medical upgrades at Maplewood General. It was his anonymous donation that paid for Mrs. Dawson's new heart monitor and medication for the year. Ellie learned this from the nurse one evening as they closed camp, folding chairs and rolling up banners. "You don't have to keep doing all this in secret," she said. Wyatt glanced up from the supply bin. "I'm not doing it for attention." "I know," she replied. "But maybe it's okay if people see the good you're doing. Maybe they deserve to." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm still figuring out what it means to truly show up." She stepped closer. "I used to think being loved meant being used. Like people only stuck around when they needed something." His eyes met hers, calm and steady. "And I used to think being known meant being rejected. Like if I showed who I really was, no one would stay." She reached for his hand. "Let's stop running," she said. "No more fear. No more hiding. Just walking toward each other." Wyatt exhaled slowly, then smiled a genuine, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. "Deal," he whispered. That night, they sat on the steps of the future bookstore, watching the river drift silently beneath the moonlight. The The town behind them was peaceful. The stars above shone clearly for the first time in ages. Neither needed words, because everything they wanted to say was already being lived. The doorbell jingled for the 100th time that morning. Rising River Books and Cafe was officially open, and Maplewood had come out in full force. Sunlight poured through the tall front windows, casting golden beams across shelves filled with paperbacks and hardcovers, memoirs and children's stories. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with soft conversations and bursts of laughter. A group of toddlers sat cross-legged in the reading nook, listening to Miss Ellie now lovingly called story Lady read from a picture book about a talking river. Near the back, two retired teachers debated their favorite American poets over herbal tea in the community corner. Neighbors exchanged gently used novels and posted handwritten notes on the Books I Love board. The space pulsed with life not just as a business, but as a home, built not for profit, but for purpose. And at the heart of it all stood Ellie, watching it unfold with misty eyes and a heart fuller than she'd ever imagined. Wyatt moved quietly through the crowd, refilling mugs, picking up napkins, helping a small boy reach a high shelf. He wasn't wearing his cowboy hat today, but the familiar ease lingered in his movements. No longer a stranger, no longer a secret, just a man firmly rooted where he chose to be. By noon, the official ribbon-cutting ceremony began. Ellie stood by the door holding a pair of silver scissors, Wyatt beside her, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. Her mother sat in the front row, cheeks flushed with pride, eyes shining. Hannah waved from behind the coffee bar, already out of muffins but grinning from ear to ear. "Thank you," Ellie said warmly, addressing the crowd. A year ago, this place was just a dream, or maybe a memory waiting to be made. And none of this would have happened without all of you. She turned to Wyatt. Especially you. The ribbon fluttered to the floor amid cheers. Flashbulbs popped. The crowd surged forward, flooding the store like sunlight through an open window. Later that afternoon, as the noise softened and sunlight turned golden, Wyatt led Ellie to the back of the store, away from the chatter. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small square box. "I've been holding on to this," he said. "For the right day." Ellie's breath caught. "Today's the day." He nodded and opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, its band hammered smooth with delicate, unpolished gray stones set in the center. She recognized it immediately. "The river," she whispered. He smiled. "The day you pulled me from the water, you dropped your flashlight. When I went back to find it, I found this caught in the rocks. I kept it. I didn't know why then." He looked at her steadily. "But now I do." Ellie blinked back tears. "You didn't just save my life that day," he said. "You saved what was left of me. You pulled me out of more than just a river. You pulled me out of a life where I didn't belong, into one I never thought I deserved." He held out the ring. "I know this place is yours. I just hope there's still room in it for me." Ellie's hands trembled as she took the ring, her voice barely a whisper. "There always was." He slipped it onto her finger. It wasn't perfect. Neither were they. But it was exactly what they both needed. Imperfect, enduring, and real. Outside, children laughed in the reading nook. Coffee steamed. Sunlight danced across the bookshelves like confetti. And just beyond the windows, the Maplewood River flowed steadily and quietly, just as it always had. Ellie looked up at him and smiled. "You once said you didn't need to own a place to call a home," she whispered. "But now you do." Wyatt leaned in, resting his forehead gently against hers. "You saved me from a flood," he murmured, "and from a life that was sinking without even knowing it. So let me be the one who stays." With her hand in his, Ellie Dawson opened the door, not just to their bookstore, but to the life they had built word by word, day by day from the silence they broke and the courage to start anew. Thank you for joining us on this journey of love, redemption, and finding home in the most unexpected places. If Wyatt and Ellie's story touched your heart, reminded you of the quiet power of second chances, or made you believe a little more in the goodness of people, then this is the kind of story we'll keep sharing with you. Don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to soul-stirring stories here. Every story is meant to heal, inspire, and remind you that sometimes the smallest acts can change everything. Until next time, Keep your heart open because love often finds us where we least expect it.